A zombie is an organism that has died, but somehow keeps moving, even after losing control of its movements and will. In nature, there are many kinds of zombies because many animals are manipulated by other animals or by parasites that use them for reproduction or feeding. In every case, the infected organism has died, and its movements are obviously involuntary or controlled by the invading organism. The closest thing to a zombie for humans is someone who is mentally deranged. However, a mentally deranged person has not died and has only lost their judgment for some psychological or physical reason. There is also a drug known as the zombie drug that induces a temporary state of derangement, and it can be fatal even in small amounts. The term zombie comes from Haiti, and it is believed to have been taken from the Bantu language, where the word zombie means the walking dead. In Haitian culture, a zombie refers to a dead person who has been reanimated using witchcraft or black magic, remaining under the control of the sorcerer who brought them back. The idea of the walking dead spread to the rest of the world in the early 20th century as horror stories became popular in literature and film. It blended with the belief that the aggression of the living dead could pass from one person to another through a bite. This was because the rabies virus made both animals and people extremely aggressive. And since in the past there was no cure for rabies, it was understood that the animal or the person was about to die or had already died. Modern fiction and fantasy present several kinds of zombies. The infectious zombie, someone who was attacked and bitten by another zombie, transmitting a virus that spreads through their body, causing the bitten person to die as well and become a zombie. Infectious zombies may move slowly, but they react very quickly to sound or light, attacking any living person to turn them into a zombie. They can also attack in groups, form large columns, and behave like a single organism. Magical zombies. They are not spread by bites or viruses. They are reanimated through magic or mystical rites. These resurrected dead serve as soldiers in an army and align more closely with the original idea that they are slaves of the one who revived them. They may even retain their intelligence, memories, and special powers, and they can attack their former friends and allies because they no longer have a soul or will. The creatures from I Am Legend are not zombies. Rather, they are another species, and although they can infect humans and are aggressive, they have vital signs, can communicate, have a leader, and even a sense of family and feelings. In real life, human zombies are scientifically impossible because the human body cannot survive more than 3 days without water and about 1 week without food. Human bodies cannot move without muscles, and certainly not if their flesh and brain are decomposing. Not to mention, they could not withstand desert heat or snowstorms. Setting aside magical zombies, if you stay until the end, we will present 2 scenarios. The first is a zombie apocalypse caused by a pandemic that produces contagious zombies without free will. The second is an attempt at world conquest by a massive army of the living dead, controlled by a person, a company, or a government. You can watch this video in chapters, and if you haven't yet, subscribe and turn on the bell. First of all, we need to establish that our scenario aims to be as realistic as possible. It rules out the existence of special beings with special abilities. Otherwise, the military would stand no chance, and the zombie virus would spread throughout the universe. In our first scenario, the zombie virus pandemic could arise from accidental contamination, where a virus escapes, reaches the atmosphere, and then falls on people. As they become aggressive, they attack others to spread the infection. There could also be a rogue scientist who releases the virus on purpose to wipe out all humanity, including himself. It is incorrect to think that if the virus appears in a single place, it would naturally spread across the entire planet. Cities in almost every country are separated by tens of kilometers, and in many cases by rivers, mountains, deserts, and other natural barriers. In addition, there are indigenous tribes that live in isolation and have no contact with any other civilization. Therefore, it is extremely unlikely that the zombie virus would wipe out the human race. The danger lies in our second scenario, where the infection is planned and carried out by an organization, a country, or a group of people. The motives may vary. Among them are the belief that the planet is overpopulated and the idea that the global population must be reduced, a historical revenge by one country to exterminate another, or a planned conquest using the virus as a weapon in violation of all international laws. The creators of the virus could intend to conquer other countries months later, when the zombies can no longer move because their bodies have spent all their energy and are decomposing. The operation to spread the virus would be complex and would have to be carried out quickly because viruses cannot survive for long outside the human body. With at least 3 weeks to spread it, a large number of people would have to be used to infect travelers at airports and transportation hubs, with the goal that within 14 days or less, the first zombies begin to appear. In both cases, it would be extremely difficult for the intelligence agencies of the superpowers not to find out what happened. They could reconstruct the events that led to the laboratory escape or discover plans for world conquest using the virus as a biological weapon. The CIA of the United States, the KGB of Russia, or the Mossad of Israel could learn of the plans before they are carried out and carry out attacks to eliminate the scientists working to modify the virus as a weapon or the leaders of the organization or country that wants to spread the zombie virus. These agencies would not hesitate to act preemptively, because once the virus spreads, it will be much harder to stop, since many of their own members could be infected. Even with 3 weeks to spread the virus, it would be extremely difficult to infect the entire planet in a single operation. There are cities separated by more than 1,000 kilometers from any other, such as the city of Iquitos in the Amazon rainforest, Perth in Australia, or Reykjavik in Iceland. These cities could refuse to receive new arrivals as soon as they learn about the pandemic. The creators of the virus could program certain instructions for the zombies to obey, such as attacking anyone with a weapon or in military clothing, grouping together to attack vehicles that make a lot of noise, surrounding and attacking military bases, or even being selective about which people to attack by sparing the race of those who initiated the pandemic. Zombies used as a tool could be deployed to conquer the planet region by region, since there is no way to travel on foot from one continent to another without bridges or infrastructure. Even though the Strait of Gibraltar is the closest point between Europe and Africa, zombies could not cross or walk along the seafloor because they would be swept away by the currents. In the Middle East, the route between Egypt and Israel includes vast desert areas, making it impossible for zombies to pass from Africa to Europe and Asia, or vice versa. The economic, social, and environmental consequences of a zombie apocalypse would be extremely disastrous for the entire planet. We must keep in mind that if the virus managed to infect only half of the world's population, much of the other half would also die from hunger, thirst, or cold once supply lines stopped functioning. Economically, trade systems and stores would not last long, and cities would become uninhabitable. The knowledge and personnel needed to operate water, electricity, communications, and sanitation infrastructure would disappear. Besides, in their struggle to survive, people would loot whatever they could. Without maintenance of urban infrastructure, many fuel leaks would occur, and there would be fires. Without people to put them out, cities would be degraded even further, because paramedics, firefighters, and other rescue teams would also be among the first to be infected as they tried to save lives. Governments will lose control of the population, many people will be involved in traffic accidents, and many others will be injured or infected while trying to record what is happening on video to post it on their social media. With civil authorities absent, the military will operate autonomously, and in many countries, martial law is likely to be declared. On the side of organized crime, mercenaries and gangs will have even less respect for human life in their drive to survive, and they will commit even worse atrocities. Armed civilians will not hesitate to use their weapons to protect themselves and their families. Although zombies would be easy to recognize by their aggressive behavior, spasmodic movements, visible scars, discolored skin, glassy stares, or a pale, cadaverous appearance, there will be many errors in judgment, and civilians will kill each other out of panic. However, there will be another group of people who will refuse to let go of their loved ones, because it is extremely difficult to detach from the emotional bond with the dead. Partners will not want to abandon each other, and parents will not want to abandon their children, because as long as they move, they will believe there is hope. There will also be fear among those fleeing the cities to help others. They will be reluctant to help strangers, not knowing whether they are infected, which will cause many more people to die while trying to escape the cities. The extreme will come when the virus affects the point where people must eliminate zombies who were once children. All respect for human life and for kindred beings will be lost. There is also the possibility that the virus could affect domestic animals, which are already chemically similar to us after thousands of years of coexistence. Environmentally, nuclear plants would have no one to operate them, and they would cause incalculable damage to the environment. If the mechanisms to shut down the reactors are not activated, the radiation would endure for centuries. If the virus reaches a military base, the response would be different, because people trained in military life would do whatever is necessary to isolate the infection at any cost. They would be able to develop strategies to deceive and fight the zombies more quickly. This knowledge would be transmitted quickly to other military bases, allowing large-scale strategies to be developed by senior commanders to combat the infection. In other words, the armed forces would go from not knowing what a zombie is to knowing how to fight them in a matter of days. Nuclear shelters designed to withstand up to 4 years of total nuclear war would be used immediately by top leaders, people in power, and senior military commanders. They would serve as shelters and command centers from which special missions would be directed to regain control of military bases, space centers, ammunition depots, and scientific laboratories. These sites would be vital for research, coordination, and action in the long battles that would be required to eliminate the infection. The aerospace campaign by the armed forces would begin the moment the first cases appear. Its first aim would be to rescue and transport key individuals to secure shelters. Top leaders and the wealthiest business figures would be the first to be brought to safety, if possible. As soon as it is discovered that the virus spreads from person to person and no cure is available, bombing and isolation missions will be ordered. Bridges and other infrastructure will be destroyed to separate the infected from those who have managed to escape. Other key missions would include resupplying isolated bases and transporting the scientists working to find a solution, escorted by special forces to protect them. Unfortunately, nuclear weapons could be used in the first months to eliminate large numbers of zombies in major cities when it is determined that there is no other solution and there is a danger of further spread. Once the superpowers realize they cannot handle the infection on their own, unprecedented cooperation may arise among the world's aerospace forces to monitor the infection by satellite and regroup their personnel. International agreements on arms control in space would be suspended until the pandemic ends. This would allow nations to design and launch satellites equipped with specialized weaponry and weapons of mass destruction, including directed energy weapons coordinated by other surveillance satellites, to eliminate zombies in specific areas. Little by little, the armed forces would adjust the frequencies of the energy weapons to affect only the zombies, avoiding harm to plants and other animals as much as possible. In the second stage, few rescue and recovery missions would be carried out to avoid losing more personnel, fuel, and vehicles. However, regular cargo, transport, and protection missions would be executed to move supplies and fuel, and to protect distribution centers, farms, and other agricultural areas, seeking to secure food production for the survivors. If a civilian aircraft appears, it would be contacted to confirm that no one on board is infected. If the pilots cannot assure that their occupants are clear, or if they refuse to land at the designated airports to screen the passengers, the aircraft would almost certainly be shot down. In the event the virus is a weapon of conquest used by an organization or a country, most aerospace intelligence and combat assets would be dedicated to locating and destroying the attacker's facilities. Satellite surveillance would be established across the entire planet. If the attackers used unregistered aircraft or vehicles, they would be found. It is highly unlikely the attackers would have enough combat aircraft to stop the combined forces of the superpowers. Those forces would field modern, stealthy fighter jets, along with support aircraft for refueling, surveillance, command, and control. Once the attackers' facilities are located, cruise and ballistic missiles would be launched to destroy them. If they have fortified underground sites, they would be struck with nuclear weapons and bunker buster munitions, and finally besieged. The naval campaign to control the pandemic would be extremely difficult. In the first stage, warships, cargo ships, and transports would be tasked with rescuing as many people as possible. This would turn ports into chaotic places where people are trying to escape, and where many incidents would occur between civilians and the military, and even among some service members trying to save their families, even if those family members are infected. Countless operations would be carried out to secure the perimeters of the ports, and strict controls would be established on the ships. A single mistake in selecting those rescued could be catastrophic, because the infection would spread quickly on board, and there would be nowhere to escape. Life aboard the vessels will be very difficult. There will be shortages of food and supplies. Cooperation among different types of ships may occur to mitigate the situation, but we must understand that most military ships are not designed to sustain large groups of people for long periods of time. With satellite assistance, uninfected islands would be surveyed as places to relocate people. However, operations would be very slow, because ships would take days or even weeks to go and return. And on top of that comes the challenge of securing fuel. Very strict naval control measures would be established. Ships would be attacked and sunk if their course is erratic or if they fail to respond to communications. In the first weeks, soldiers sent to control riots before they understand the situation will be infected. As a result, most riot control units will be lost, and they, in turn, will attack others, spreading the infection. However, remember that the military can rapidly withdraw personnel to regroup and plan strategies, and their communications will quickly spread knowledge of the infection. Strict orders controlling who enters or leaves military bases would be enforced, and radio, emergency broadcast systems, or internet channels would be established to communicate with civilians. Basic instructions on hand-to-hand combat and how to cover the most vulnerable areas would be transmitted so civilians can defend themselves. And many civilians will also be recruited or called to service to fight the infection. Several missions could be carried out to try to capture and examine zombies. Many will fail, and large numbers of vehicles would be left abandoned, but they can be recovered later. There will be abuses of authority and mistreatment of civilians, varying by each country's culture, and there will also be excesses by the military in enforcing martial law. As expected, the country with the greatest chances of survival would be the United States, due to the large number of firearms in civilian hands. However, this would come at an extremely high cost in lives, because Americans would shoot and eliminate any zombie or person just to be safe, without verifying whether they are infected or not. The number of dead would be immense, with no possibility of proper burials or adequate disposal of the bodies. This would in turn lead to infections and unsanitary conditions that would infect the living as well as other species. Once on the offensive, urban cleanups of the infected would take months, with the military having to go house by house. Although civilians would be using rudimentary weapons such as hammers, knives, sticks, firearms, and the ever-reliable Molotov cocktails, many of those battles would be lost because many people would be surrounded by zombies and overcome by exhaustion. Worse still, even when struck in areas that are fatal for living beings, the zombies would keep moving. So it is incorrect to think these would be the weapons the military would use to control the infection. The military would use directed energy and microwave weapons, systems that already exist today and are used for riot control. The microwave frequency would be increased to burn zombie bodies on a large scale. Satellites could also be used as microwave weapons in places confirmed to have no living people, or noise traps could be triggered to herd the zombies to a specific location and aim the satellites there. To this we can add naval lasers, now in development as anti-aircraft weapons, with their frequencies adjusted to burn zombies, offering virtually unlimited shots in the case of ships with nuclear reactors. The zombie infection would last several years. Major cities would be left in ruins. The few people who survive would face the enormous challenge of reconstruction. The armed forces would bear the heavy responsibility of preventing reinfection by locating and eliminating criminal groups that would use zombies as entertainment, and by locating and eliminating zombies still being kept by civilians out of emotional attachment. In conclusion, humanity will survive the zombie apocalypse at an immense cost in lives, using technology and directed energy weapons that already exist, tools that aren't shown in series and movies in order to keep the excitement for fans of this genre. Point your finger and shoot the like button. It's a zombie. Comment and share this video on your social networks. We give thanks to our commanders because their sponsorship helps us remain independent and neutral. If you want to be one of our commanders, consider becoming a member of our channels. You'll see the videos before subscribers, and you'll get exclusive badges that will make your comments stand out when you post.